So I'm going to start with a confession. I was supposed to graduate from TSU in 1975, but I somehow managed to come up one credit short. What can I say? The school taught me many things, but keeping track of my credits was not one of them. And to be fair, I did have a lot on my plate at the time. I was living at my father's house. I was commuting from East Nashville every day. Then I'd get home and I'd work in my father's store. And on weekends, I'd be reading news at WVOL. So, sophomore year, I was majoring in speech communication and drama. I'd wanted to be an actress, but my father had proclaimed that no daughter of mine's going to be on somebody's casting couch. And so I decided, all right, I will teach. But I was having some challenges, particularly with my scenic design class. It was taught by Mr. W. Dury Cox, who declared in front of the entire backstage crew where we had our class in the theater, and this is a quote, "Winfrey cannot draw a straight line with a ruler." So in his class, one day I got a call, got pulled out of Mr. Cox's lecture to take a call from Chris Clark, who was the lead anchor at WLAC TV Channel 5 at the time. It's now WTBF. But he was the news director and lead anchor at Channel 5. And Chris had heard me on WVOL radio. Don't ask me why Chris Clark was listening to a black radio station. Jesus led him to it, I guess. Anyway, he called me here at TSU and wanted to know if I was interested in being in television. And I said, no, sir. TV? No, not really, sir, because my father says I have to finish school and school is just too important. And I doubt that my dad would even let me do it, something like that. So Chris told me to just give it some thought and get back to him. And when I returned to Mr. Cox's class, I repeated what Chris Clark had said to me, that whole conversation. And I said to Mr. Cox, I don't think my father would even consider it. Now, Mr. Cox had a face like the lion from The Wizard of Oz and a demeanor that nobody would ever call warm or fuzzy or comforting. And he looked at me as if I didn't have the brains that God gave lettuce. And he said, "This is why you get an education, fool. So that CBS, Channel 5 will call you. You and your father ought to know that." He rolled his eyes and he was walking away. He said, "I'll tell him myself." And he did. So second semester, sophomore year here at TSU, I arranged for all of my classes to be finished by 2 p.m. And from 2:30 to 10:30, I worked at the television station. That left me just enough time to make it back for my father's ironclad 11 o'clock curfew. So I am doing the evening news, finish at 10:30, and my dad is like, "Better be home by 11. So by graduation, my career was in full swing, and I didn't feel the need to pursue a diploma. But for years, and I mean long after I started the Oprah Winfrey Show, not a conversation with my father would pass without him asking, "When you gonna get that degree?" So finally in 1988, got my degree from Tennessee State. Right about the same time, I got my third Emmy. I know not what the future holds, but I know who holds the future. And I want to tell you, I've been guided by the light of God's grace my entire life. People ask, what's the secret to my success? It's because I lean into His grace. Because life is always talking to us. And this is what I do know. When you tap into what it's trying to tell you, when you can get yourself quiet enough to listen, I mean, really listen, you can begin to distill the still small voice, which is always representing the truth of you from the noise of the world. And you can start to recognize when it comes your way. You can learn to make distinctions, to connect, to dig a little deeper. You'll be able to find your own voice within the still small voice. You'll begin to know your own heart and figure out what matters most when you can listen to the still small voice. Every right move I've made has come from listening deeply and following that still small voice, aligning myself with its power, with the source of power, so that when I walk into a room just as cool as you please, and the fellas either stand or fall down on their knees and they say, "That's a phenomenal woman." And when I walk into that room, I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. Because everybody that's ever come before me walks into that room with me. I come as one, I stand as 10,000 has been my mantra for power. Because for so many of my earlier years, when I was the only woman, I was the only person of color, the one nobody expected to be in the room at the table on the anchor desk, co-anchoring the news here in Nashville in 1975, walking into boardrooms in the 80s, negotiating deals to own my own show. Not just do the show, but to make as much money from it as they were going to make off of me. And at no time did I ever feel out of place or not enough or inadequate or an imposter. Do not let the world make an imposter syndrome out of you. Why? Because I knew who I was. And more importantly, I knew whose I was. I didn't know the future, but I knew who was in charge of the future. And my job, just as your job is, to align with God's dream for you. And my prayer was always, use me. Use me, God. Show me how and who you need me to be. Because this is what I will tell you. God can dream a bigger dream for you than you could ever imagine for yourself. I am living testimony of aligning and living his dream. Everybody always thinks you got to go do something big and grand. I'll tell you where you start. You start by being good to at least one other person every single day. That's how you begin to change the world, by just being good to one other person. It doesn't matter if it's a member of your tribe or a stranger on the street. I'm here to tell you that a little act of compassion can be a lifesaver for somebody who receives it, but also for you who offers it. Just extend yourself in love and kindness to somebody. And as my dear friend Maya always said, love recognizes no barriers. It jumps hurdles, it leaps fences, it penetrates walls to arrive at its destination full of hope. And when you step out in love, you become someone's hope.
You will be wounded many times in your life. You'll make mistakes. Some people will call them failures. But I have learned that failure is really God's way of saying, excuse me, you're moving in the wrong direction. It's just an experience. I remember being taken off the air in Baltimore, being told that I was no longer being fit for television and that I could not anchor the news because I used to go out on the stories. And my own truth was, even though I'm not a weeper, I would cry for the people in the stories, and which really wasn't very effective as a news reporter, to be covering a fire and crying because the people lost their house. And it wasn't until I was demoted as a on-air anchor woman and thrown into the talk show arena to get rid of me that I allowed my own truth to come through. And the first day I was on the air doing my first talk show back in 1978, it felt like breathing, which is what your true passion should feel like. It should be so natural to you. And so I took what had been a mistake, what had been perceived as a failure with my career as an anchor woman in the news business, and turned it into a talk show career that's done okay for me.
Learning that I could specifically determine for myself what the boundaries were for me, what I wanted to do, give my money, give my time, give of my service to who I wanted to give it to when I did, that I get to make that decision. And just because you get 100 requests a week doesn't mean you have to try to fulfill all of that. Just because you have all of these demands on your time and on you doesn't mean that you have to say yes. You get to decide because you're the master of your fate. The captain of your soul, as William Ernest Henley said in Invictus. And understanding that really changed the meaning of my life, in that I was no longer driven by what other people wanted me to do, but took charge of my own destiny, making choices based upon what do I feel is the next right move for me.
I truly believe that thoughts are the greatest vehicle to change power and success in the world. Everything begins with thoughts. I mean, the chairs that we're sitting in, the room that we're in, all started because somebody thought it. So I thought up The Color Purple for myself. I know this is going to sound strange to you. I read the book. I got so many copies of that book. I passed the book around to everybody I knew. If I was on the bus, I'd pass it out to people. And when I heard that there was going to be a movie, I started talking it up for myself. I didn't know Quincy Jones or Steven Spielberg or how on earth I would get in this movie. I'd never acted in my life, but I felt it so intensely that I had to be a part of that movie. I really do believe I created it for myself. I wanted it more than anything in the world and would have done anything to do it. Anything to do it.
I'm asking the bigger question of who am I? Who am I really? My answer is I am God's child. I am that which is born of all that is. I am, as Pierre de Chardin said, a spiritual being having a human experience, come trailing the breath of the ancestors yet, but trailing the breath of the angels. And understanding that because I am connected to the source of all that is possible for me. And what do I want? I don't want to just be successful in the world. I don't want to just make a mark or have a legacy. The answer to that question for me is I want to fulfill the highest, truest expression of myself as a human being. I want to fulfill the promise that the Creator dreamed when He dreamed the cells that made up me. What do I want? You must have some kind of vision for your life. Even if you don't know the plan, you have to have a direction in which you choose to go. I never was the kind of woman who liked to get in a car and just go for a ride. You want to be in the driver's seat of your own life, because if you're not, life will drive you. Knowing who you really are in this space and time that we embody. You must find a way to serve. Martin Luther King said that not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great because greatness is determined by service. Now, we live in a world where everybody wants to be famous and where we admire people for just being famous. We think being known brings us value. The truth is, all of that will fade in time. Service and the significance that you bring to your service is that which is lasting. So to be able to, whatever your occupation or job or talent or gift is, our honorees today getting doctorate degrees, to apparently opposite fields, HIV and AIDS and the spoken word. But what they have in common is service, using the spoken word in service to community in the world, using your knowledge and information about HIV and AIDS and medicine in service to the world. And if you look at all the most successful people in the world, whether they know it or not, they have that paradigm of service. Service through medicine, service through art. Using whatever it is you produce, your product, as a way of giving back to the world. When you shift the paradigm of whatever it is you choose to do to service, and you bring significance to that, success will, I promise you, follow you. Be excellent. Let excellence be your brand. Everybody talks about building a brand. I never even knew what that was. When people say, you're a brand, I would say, no, I'm just Oprah. What I recognize now is that my choice to, in every way, in every example, in every experience, to do the right thing and the excellent thing is what has created the brand. Years ago, I did an ad for Revlon for an ad they were doing called Unforgettable Women. And what I know is that when you are excellent, you become unforgettable. People remember you. You stand out. Regardless of what it is, you become an unforgettable woman. And that is what we all want. We want to be unforgettable and not forgettable. So doing the right thing, even when nobody knows you're doing the right thing, will always bring the right thing to you. I promise you that. Why? Because the third law of motion is always at work. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That is so true in all of our lives. Everything you even try to do to me, already done to you. So you don't have to worry about revenge or getting back at somebody, making sure they pay. You just have to do the right thing, and the right thing will follow you even when people don't support it. I remember many times on my show. There are many shows y'all never saw. And the reason you didn't see them is because I got the last vote. The most important thing I have come to know in doing the right thing and making the right choices is understanding all of you leaving here have the potential for enormous success. There's a price that comes with that. People don't always like you, and they're not always happy for you. And if you surround yourself with people who are not accustomed to your success, they become fearful. They become scared because you are reflecting back something to them that they don't recognize. People who want the best for you want you to be your best. So my greatest advice to you is to surround yourself with people who are going to fill your cup until your cup runneth over. I'm so full, my cup runneth over. And to know that once your cup runneth over, you cannot spend your life with your gallon-size offerings, offering them to pint-sized people. You have got to surround yourself with gallon-sized people who can hang in the same company with you, so that you're not offering your gallons to those little pints out there who can't hold it anyway. The biggest choices begin and end with you, your internal big questions. Who do I want to be in the world? My relationship to source energy, to all that is God, your experience of that which is all life, which is divine and universal, being connected and aligned with that. When you are tuned in and charged into that, whenever you feel empty, you go inside yourself and you connect to the source, and you know that all things are possible.